To what extent can sanitation lessons in schools be an effective agent of change for Uganda's future? Sanitation is the state or the conditions relating to public health, more so the provisions a country has made to clean drinking water and the management of human waste. This is such an integral part of society which in developed countries isn't a second thought, but in many developing countries this is an enormous issue. Major diseases such as cholera, typhoid, and diarrhea arise due to poor sanitation management. The United Nations developed 17 Sustainable Development Goals in order to achieve a better and sustainable future for all. The goal most relevant to sanitation is Sustainable Development Goal 6, which is ensure available and sustainable water and sanitation for all. All over the world, sanitation practices and water sustainability differs, but at least 892 million people continue to practice open defecation. Over 2.4 billion people lack access to basic sanitation services such as toilets, and each day nearly 1,000 children die due to preventable water and sanitation-related diarrheal diseases. Women and girls are responsible for collecting water in 80% of households without access to water on the premises worldwide. This is similar in Uganda, as over 60% of children live over 30 minutes walk from a water source, which again is the responsibility of women and girls, meaning the girls tend to opt out going to school in order to help the families. In addition, it is known that in 2016, 40% of families in Uganda do not have access to a toilet, whereas in 2013, 75% of families did not have access to improved sanitation. This means that there was improvement, however, it just was not enough for these families, and the continuous growth of population, which is currently at 3% per year, means drastic changes are imperative. Looking forward, due to Uganda's finances and the reliance of private funding that exists for water and sanitation, this means the progress previously made will come to a halt as private funding is not effectively getting to the root of the problem and can be seen as a plaster effect, meaning that the country is completely off track to meet the rural share of the MDG target of 70% of rural sanitation coverage. The East African country, with its current population of 35.6 million, has overcome many hardships with countless military coups and dictatorships since its independence from Britain in 1962. Despite leaps and bounds made on combating national issues such as HIV and AIDS with rigorous campaigning, poor sanitation and hygiene is a cross-cutting health concern in all Ugandan rural communities and the major city of Kampala, as outlined in the facts and figures previously mentioned. Despite there being major attention from organisations on tackling this problem from the Uganda Village Project and the Uganda Sanitation Fund, who was the leading sanitation programme in the country, they were met with challenges in specifically ensuring sustainable behavioural change. This, coupled with the wide discrepancies in access to rural water supplies between and within districts, and even slower progress of the increase in urban and rural sanitation coverage due to very low public funding and inconsistent management. There is a clear understanding that public action needs to be stepped up further, but how is that possible? We think targeting primary schools, which is essentially Uganda's future, is the best course of action. Their thematic curriculum already encompasses all the tools needed for a holistic and enjoyable learning journey and has acted in including social imperatives such as HIV and AIDS awareness. All 12 villages in Western Uganda have received training on hygiene and sanitation issues, as 11 schools have run hygiene and sanitation programs educating over 2,100 students. We propose making this compulsory for every primary school to be afforded this and will impact positively. Targeting a nation's youth in changing certain behaviours is a well-known strategy highlighted by countless theorists and brought out in the controversial documentary School in the World, The White Man's Last Burden. This notion of if you wanted to change an ancient culture in a single generation, you would change the way it educates its children. Unlike the predecessors of aid work carried out centuries ago, we are not trying to dictate the whole of Uganda's rich culture to one of ours, rather helping the communities realise that certain practices and perceived norms have adverse results on health and well-being. Targeting primary schools will allow us to see positive results, as moulding children and creating habits for them has proven to show results quicker and efficiently due to them developing and having that brain readiness. The main theory we considered modelling our approach by is the social learning theory created by Bandura. Children will have regular contact with their teacher or their more knowledgeable other, which will influence their outlook on life and certain actions. Learning sanitary practices from their teachers, who is already a member of their community, will have a positive learning environment, allowing a trial and error as it allows for mistakes to be made and mastery of actions to happen. This theory fit well into our focus as Bandura made it clear that one's sense of self-efficacy is mainly learnt through persuasive arguments and encouragement by credible people within an appropriate social context. Shields aligns with the intended approach for our actions in stating development aid is more than just donating funds but also a transfer of ideas. Proposing to introduce these lessons to the curriculum is an effective approach as it involves the schools, communities and government, again moving away from the modus operandi of the foreign aid being the source of the aid receivers' problems and trying to change and effectively take control of their way of life, rather making it a collaborative experience to achieve desirable and sustainable results. How will the children help to educate adults? By introducing this topic in all schools throughout Uganda will strengthen the life skills of pupils, give them the self-esteem and confidence in understanding and knowing methods useful for them in life. They can then go and explain to their families what they have learned at school, which is a positive effect. These lessons could be made as interactive and as interesting as possible. The teachers have an opportunity to continue building positive relationships with the students and taking these lessons to a fun room. Placing great emphasis on ensuring it's being taught by the teachers is important to us, not only from an emotional level, but looking at the social learning theory. Children will be receptive to learning from an effective role model. Furthermore, the provision of hygiene, education and creating awareness is always positive and will result in producing a new generation of social norms. But again, if the environment isn't conducive and giving the opportunity in carrying out the new, then this benefit and overall good is short-lived. In educating and bringing light to these solutions on improving the conditions of sanitation, it's important to avoid creating an image of self-importance and being a knowledge bank. Jones highlighted the approach of the World Bank in describing their aid as the best practices. This pretentious manner of conveying messages will only be met with combative attitudes, and especially in the backdrop of historical events. Due to the expenses, most of the countries had to rely on the World Bank's finances, which inevitably gave them control of their education policies, and it didn't matter if it was for the benefit of the country or not, which again is a potential limitation. Sanitation lessons within schools will only be partially beneficial due to the surrounding environment, as if there are not any physical facilities available, then the children and families cannot carry out the practices that they've been taught in the sanitation lessons. In addition, introducing and building upon sanitation knowledge with children may not be as beneficial as we think, as making the children aware of the practices they could complete to help improve sanitation, but that doesn't mean it's behaviour change. Therefore, the children may have the knowledge of practice but may not use it. This would also be highly likely in locations that just simply do not have the sanitation facilities.